Hi friends, welcome back. So headline, Elon Musk's Neuralink forced a pregnant employee to work with herpes infected monkeys that scratched her, lawsuit says. And yes, that's a real headline. June 17, 2024. I read this like, what the heck is going on? And I looked into it further, and this actually represents a lot of the economic environment that we're in. We're going to be talking about Musk news today, a little bit of what the Fed is up to and how consumers are feeling. And always appreciate coming back for more. And I try my best to keep you informed as best as possible. So first, we'll start with this. We'll get back to the Neuralink thing in a second, though. But it's all related where Musk is trying to soften his prior go F yourself comments regarding Twitter. And I guess he's at some sort of conference saying, you know, when I said go F yourself to advertisers, I wasn't really talking about advertisers. I was just talking about free speech, etc. And it's basically, again, trying to walk back what he said. And if anyone who saw the stuff, he was, you know, kind of making fun of Bob Iger over at Disney and other advertisers. And in my personal opinion, not a great way to do business, but it is what it is. And what does this have to do with the Neuralink thing? Well, I think it represents that the money isn't there anymore. The investors aren't necessarily so willing to, you know, give, say, Mr. Musk money for all of his ventures, right? I say all of it because he's been doing pretty well with his XAI stuff, right? Raising money for artificial intelligence stuff, but maybe not necessarily everything. And also, too, the money isn't necessarily flowing for him. Remember, he was trying to tell us and convince us that it's not about the money regarding the pay package, but I think clearly it is. And what do I mean by that? So the money's not flowing into Twitter, and also too with Neuralink. So the basic gist of it is that there was a woman working at, I guess, the lab, and this is a lawsuit. So, you know, we'll see how this plays out. But I guess some of these monkeys had herpes, and then she's saying that the Neuralink didn't provide them with the safety equipment needed to keep, you know, employees safe. And also too, she was saying that the deadlines that they kept giving them were you know, too fast, etc. And that also has to do with money. So just imagine, guys, if you're under the pressure, right? Like you know, people who are putting money in, say, Neuralink, or the funding's running out, etc. You're like, you gotta hurry, right? And so that sort of creates these deadlines that it may be impossible to reach. And then also too, you don't have the funding to keep your employees safe. So that's what this represents to me. And I think we're going to see a lot of this kind of stuff as we go through this. Here's another example of this. It says documents show Musk X plans to become next Venmo, and this is on June 18, 2024. He's involved in so many dramas. It's funny. But this actually shows, it's interesting because even though it's about how he wants his Twitter/X to be a payments app, there was a part of the filing, because he has to register with multiple states to get, you know, permission to do this, you know, to because you're sending money, right, from people to people, or consumer to consumer, I could say. But they had to show like their internal documents from Twitter in terms of their financial situation. I guess they're losing money at Twitter. We already knew that, but by how much? There's some more details, and I'll go over this with you. It says financial details with regulators in the documents also highlight the company's business struggles, right? So they're struggling over there since Musk took over in 2022. They showed that X generated 1.48 billion in revenue in the first 6 months of 2023, down almost 40% from the same period in 2022. Before Musk bought the company, it lost 456 million in the first quarter of 2023. And then I guess Bloomberg is forecasting maybe they're going to lose 3.4 billion in revenue in you know, the entirety of 2023. And the other thing that was kind of interesting, because I actually didn't know what the exact percentage it was. They're saying here that Musk has 75% of X. So I guess no other investor, they're saying, has more than 10%. And you put all this stuff together, right? You have, you know, lawsuits against Neuralink. You're losing revenue over Twitter, and also too, he's kind of, I don't know if begging is the right word, but just say walking about his earlier comments regarding to advertisers. Moreover, it's also interesting because depending on, you know, which channels you watch, we know that Tesla's growth in sales is slowing, right? And sometimes people say, oh, you know, it's all of EVs, but not necessarily, actually. It's interesting because I was looking at this. So this actually shows which brands are you know, growing their EV sales and which ones are not. I'm talking about electric vehicles here. So Tesla, GM, and Volkswagen are actually down. So this is quarter one. Whereas Hyundai, Ford, Rivian, Mercedes, BMW, Toyota are all increasing their amount of sales. So it is true, though, and I want to make this really clear. Tesla is still the leader in terms of how many cars they make, right? I mean, you can see that they they make a lot more EVs than other manufacturers, but the other manufacturers are certainly growing and catching up, right? So you can certainly see that there. Also, too, if you want to look at the aggregate numbers, so the before this was the percentages, right, of EV sales going down, and this is another interesting one is that overall they're all increasing year by year, right? So it is starting to flatten a bit though in 2023. So even though EV sales are increasing, it's not like at the crazy growth that it once was. Because usually, like say when the new thing comes out, people want to try it out and then they're kind of excited about it. And also too, maybe there's a particular brand. So maybe when the Teslas first came out, they were kind of gonna say like a hip thing, be the first kid in the block to get one. But then after you start to hear reports about what's it like to have one, do you actually save money? What's insurance costs? These kind of things. Sort of the newness and the shininess wears off. And also too, other manufacturers have had a chance to sort of sharpen their plans and figure out a way to get in that makes sense for them. This is another chart that shows you guys is interesting to again which car manufacturers are selling more of these EVs and which ones are not. You can see Tesla's negative, many others are positive. But again, though, just to be clear, though, Tesla does still sell the most. But you could look at a couple different ways. You could say the pie for electric vehicles is only going to be a certain amount, right? And then they're all going to be fighting for that same pie. You could also make the case that the pie is continuing to grow. So that's what this chart is showing. Whoops, not this chart here. Actually, where is it? This chart here is showing that the pie is growing, but maybe not as faster rate as people think. And it depends what we want to look at. So this is like a couple different forecasts. So that's this black line and the gray line. And I mean, like I said, no one can predict the future 100%, but it depends on which line that you want to look at. Now, I was telling you guys about before, when you put all this stuff together, like is essentially the money flowing or not flowing, and are investors so confident about the future? So this is actually an interesting article. This was June 20, 2024. It says businesses are rushing to use generative AI. Now comes the messy part, and that's the messy part is can you make money on this stuff? And we just saw NVIDIA, right, reach the largest market cap in the world. And then the question is, and I posed it to you guys several times on channel, are the companies going to continue to say buy NVIDIA chips or other chips companies? Because if you do, you hope you're going to make money with AI. And this was actually a survey that Bain did, so one of the consulting firms, and they have some really interesting data I want to go over with you guys also. So it says here, 85% of companies said adopting AI was a top 5 priority. So at least the ones that they asked, said it's important to them. 12% listed it as their top priority, and then only 1% said it was not priority. So a lot of the companies are getting into AI. And also too, I guess this is what they're saying, language generation and software coding are the 2 most common AI applications. So I think this kind of stuff, so language generation, like writing emails or writing sort of letters, and it's kind of funny these days when you see something on the internet, and sometimes we'll talk about like, oh, this person put out an apology, or oh, this person sent a letter or email that everyone's fired, and like it kind of feels like AI generated. So it'll be interesting if the AI, whatever one you use, ChatGPT or Google's or Microsoft's or whatever, or Apple's when they come out, if eventually the language will get to be more natural to where you can't necessarily tell that it was written by a computer, but at the moment though you can kind of recognize how they look. The software coding one though, I think, and I don't code, so I think though this will be a big one for many coders, and I've heard people in the community that they're already using this kind of thing. Anyway, but this is the top things that they're using it for. Also says here, companies reported spending $5 million a year on generative AI, so that's the average. And then a fifth of the companies said they're spending more than $50 million, right? To show you the kind of scale of how much money is in this stuff. Average annual generative AI spend for companies with more than $5 billion in revenue was $13 million. So this is how much money they're dedicating to this based on the size of the company. And also too, you have companies with 500 million or less revenue spent, on average 1.6 million a year on this technology. And then the question again is, are you gonna make money on this stuff or not? We're talking about, again, is the money flowing or not flowing? And how does this relate to the housing market? So you can see here, mortgage demand flattens, so people don't necessarily have money, even though interest rates are going down a bit, right? It says lowest level since March. Also, too, we have consumer sentiment is down, right? And so, again, this relates to, say, what's happening over at Twitter, where they're losing revenue. So there's a couple things. One is, if you don't have a good relationship with your business partners, say in most situations where he says, go F yourself, people aren't so willing to give money to you. And also, too, there's a less overall pie of money, right? And you could make the case the same thing with the EV sales. Maybe people are interested in getting that kind of vehicle, but maybe not necessarily this year. That's sort of what consumer sentiment shows you, right? So this basically is like, hey, do I want to make a long-term purchase? Do I want to make a major purchase, right? Like a car or a house, etc. And so when you look at all this stuff, and I do this, guys, with you every day, I'm trying to get a sense of like, what are consumers doing? What are businesses doing, etc. And how are people overall feeling, right? So here's another one. U.S. mortgage rates drop below 7% for the first time, right? So then you would think, okay, well, maybe people are going to want to jump into the housing market because, rates are coming down and it's a little bit easier to get a mortgage. Maybe your payment's a bit less. But you take a look at this, U.S. home builder confidence slides to lowest level this year. So, why do you ask the home builders what they think? Well, they have to make projections internally as like, okay, where do we want to build houses? Do we want to build more houses? How much is it worth to us? And they're facing, they have a problem with like, there's not necessarily many good spaces or lots to build property. Also, too, you're looking at increased labor costs, which is a big thing, because you guys know with inflation, everything's going up in price, and the workers want to get paid more, of course. And also, you're dealing with softening demand. And so this is sort of like when we go through this stuff all the time. This is what it means to understand everything that's going on in the economy, and also to understand business. And then when people come out, so for example, Mr. Musk likes to say, hey, we're all going to buy robotaxis for whatever they're going to cost. We'll say 40,000 or 50,000 and you're all going to be rich. It's like, well, if you look at the economic environment, it's like, okay, so where are you going to get the money to buy said robotaxis, and who's going to, have the money to, rent said robotaxis, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So you want to think about always, when you look at the markets like this, is what is the overall economy doing? And one of the big, things that we watch all the time is what's going on with the Fed. I've said all along that they should probably either stand pat or raise. At the moment, it says here, Fed officials urge patience on rate cuts, that is, offer hints of timing. And I'll read a couple of quotes of the Fed. You can kind of see what they're thinking these days. And this is on June 19th is the article. So this is coming from Alberto Musalem, is from St. Louis, says here, I will need to observe a period of favorable inflation. These conditions could take months, okay, and more likely quarters to play out. So basically, be patient. Laura Logan, she says, we're going to need several months. Don't bet on cuts right away. Of that data to have confidence in our outlook that we're heading to 2%. Another one, this is Kugler saying, if the economy evolves as I am expecting, it will likely become appropriate to begin easing policy sometime later this year. It's a little bit more positive if you want the cut. John Williams says, I do see a disinflationary process continuing, and I expect inflation to keep coming down the second half of the year and next year. Barkin says, sustainment and broadening would be the two themes. We learn a lot more in the next several months, right? You guys get this sense of theme here. Susan Collins says, it is too soon to determine whether inflation is durably on a path back to 2% target. And then you have Goolsby saying, the latest CPI figure was an excellent inflation number after a few months of less excellent numbers. So hopefully we'll see more like that. And, as we go through this stuff all the time, I always say the same thing. Even if the numbers do come down in inflation, it all boils down to sort of your neck of the woods in your particular situation. So for example, if you lost your job recently, it doesn't matter what, inflation is, you're struggling. Or for example, if you're in a, fantastic industry, something like AI, you're like, I don't care what the number said, I'm doing great. But everyone's situation is going to be different. I will say though, overall as a whole market, it seems like the big sticking points right now is really the shelter. I think is a big one. Shelter costs are still really high, and you can see demand is low. So essentially, a couple things happen. I guess one, if you lower borrowing costs, it'll make it easier for people to get into homes. But what is that going to do to inflation? It'll keep it elevated because more people have money. Theoretically, you keep borrowing costs high, right? And people are like, man, I don't want to pay those prices. So prices should come down, right? But I guess, this is sort of why we track the home builders, is because they're not building enough, inventory for people to select from. So there's a lot of different things and going on. And also too, it's fun to track the whole Musk situation because he's involved in multiple things, right? He's trying to maintain older businesses, right? And legacy business, I guess you could call it, and also to open up, new businesses. So he's always looking for new money, I guess, to fund his old enterprises. So and actually it's kind of funny. Or you could say he's using Tesla to fund AI, or is he using Twitter to fund AI, et cetera. It's always a funny thing to talk about. So anyway, I love to hear your thoughts on any one of these things, and appreciate your time, and be careful with herpes infested monkeys. And I'll catch you next video.